Good morning, grandkids. I think I mentioned to you that when we come back to Grandma's bookshelf, we have finished reading Joseph Russell's book, so now we will be reading the books in Skyrim again, like we had previously. And a lot of you had wanted me to read the Wolf Queen series of books. There's several of them, but in the library of all of Skyrim's books, which I have here, there isn't a number 1, and there isn't a number either 5 or 6, I forget which one. And I've never found them anywhere out in the world either, and they are not in the list of all of Skyrim's books. So we have to start with number 2, which I already have in my possession. I also had told you that I would be using the webcam again for this series, and that I would enlarge the picture. So I hope you're all happy with that. The Wolf Queen, Book 2 by Wogan Yarth? I don't know. From the pen of the 1st century 3rd era sage Montokai. 3rd era, 82. A year after the wedding of his 14-year-old granddaughter, the Princess Potima, to King Mantiarco of the Nordic Kingdom of Solitude, the Emperor Uriel Septim II passed on. 14 years old is mighty young to be married to the king. All right. Uriel Septim passed on. His son, Pelagius Septim II, was made emperor, and he faced a greatly depleted treasury, thanks to his father's poor judgment. As the new Queen of Solitude, Potima faced opposition from the old Nordic houses, who viewed her as an outsider. Mantiaco had been widowed, and his former queen was loved. She had left him a son, Prince Bethorg, who was 2 years older than his now stepmother, and he loved her not. But the king loved his queen and suffered with her through miscarriage after miscarriage, until her 29th year, when she bore him a son. 3rd era, 97. You must do something to help the pain, Potima cried, baring her teeth. The healer Kelmuth immediately thought of a she-wolf in labor, but he put the image from his mind. Her enemies called her the Wolf Queen. For certes, I don't know what that means, for certes, but not because of any physical resemblance. Your Majesty, there is no injury for me to heal. The pain you feel is natural and helpful for the birth. He was going to add more words of consolation, but he had to break off to duck the mirror that she flung at him. I'm not a pig-nosed peasant girl, she snarled. I'm the Queen of Solitude, daughter of the Emperor. Summon the Daedra. I'll trade the soul of every last subject of mine for a little comfort. My lady, said the healer nervously, drawing curtains and blotting out the cold morning sun, it is not wise to make such offers even in jest. The eyes of oblivion are forever watching for just such a rash interjection. What would you know of oblivion, healer? She growled, but her voice was calmer, quieter. The pain had relaxed. Would you fetch me that mirror that I hurled at you? Are you going to throw it again, Your Majesty? Said the healer with a taut smile, obeying her. Very likely, she said, looking at her reflection, and next time I won't miss. But I do look a fright. Is Lord Vulcan still waiting for me in the hall? Yes, Your Majesty. Well, tell him I just need to fix my hair, and I'll be with him. And leave us. I'll howl for you when the pain returns. Yes, your majesty. A few minutes later, Lord Voken was shown into the chamber. He was an enormous, bald man whom friends and enemies called Mount Voken, and when he spoke it was with the low rumble of thunder. The queen was one of the very few people that Voken knew who was not the least bit intimidated by him, and he offered her a smile. "My queen, how are you feeling?" he asked. "Damned, but you're looking like springtide has come to Mount Voken. I take it from your merry disposition that you've been made war chief." "Only temporarily, while your husband the king investigates whether there is evidence behind the rumors of treason on the part of my predecessor, Lord Thone." "Well, if you've planted it as I've instructed, he'll find it." Fatima smiled, propping herself up in the bed. "Tell me, is Prince Bethorg still in the city?" "What a question, your highness," laughed the mountain. "It's the tournament of stamina today. You know the prince would never miss that. The fellow invents new strategies of self-defense every year to show off during the games. Don't you recall last year where he entered the ring unarmored and after 26 minutes of fending off 6 bladesmen left the games without a scratch? He dedicated that bout to his late mother, Queen Amoditha." "Yes, I recall." "He's no friend to me or you, your highness, but you must give the man his due respect. He moves like lightning. You wouldn't think it of him, but he always seems to use his awkwardness to his advantage, to throw his opponents off. Some say he learned the style from the orcs to the south. They say he learned from them how to anticipate a foe's attack by some sort of supernatural power." "There's nothing supernatural about it," said the queen quietly. "He gets it from his father." "Mantiarco never moved like that," Voken chuckled. "I never said he did," said Fatima. Her eyes closed and her teeth gritted together. "The pain's returning. You must fetch the healer. But first, I must ask you one other thing. Has the new summer palace construction begun?" "I think so, your highness." "Do not think," she cried, gripping the sheets, biting her lips so a stream of blood dripped down her chin. "Do make certain that the construction begins at once, today. Your future, my future, and the future of this child depend on it. Go." 4 hours later, King Mantiarco entered the room to see his son. His queen smiled weakly as he gave her a kiss on the forehead. When she handed him the child, a tear ran down his face. Another one quickly followed, and then another. "My lord," she said fondly, "I know you're sentimental, but really, it's not only the child, though he is beautiful with all the fair features of his mother." Mantiarco turned to his wife sadly, his aged features twisted in agony. "My dear wife, there is trouble at the palace. In truth, this birth is the only thing that keeps this day from being the darkest in my reign." "What is it? Something at the tournament?" Fatima pulled herself up in the bed. "Something with Bethorg?" "She sounds mighty anxious for it to be something with Bethorg. She's conniving, a witch." "No, it isn't the tournament, but it does relate to Bethorg. I shouldn't worry you at a time like this. You need your rest." "My husband, tell me." "I wanted to surprise you with a gift after the birth of our child, so I had the old summer palace completely renovated. It's a beautiful place, or at least it was. I thought that you might like it. Truth to tell, it was Lord Voken's idea. It used to be Amoditha's favorite place." Bitterness crept into the king's voice. "Now I've learned why." "What have you learned?" asked Fatima quietly. Amaditha deceived me there with my trusted war chief, Lord Thone. There are letters between them, the most perverse things you've ever read, and that's not the worst of it. No? The dates on the letters correspond with the time of Bethorig's birth. The boy I raised and loved as a son, Mantiarco's voice choked up with emotion. He was Thone's child, not mine. My darling, said Fatima, almost feeling sorry for the old man. She wrapped her arms around his neck as he heaved his sobs down on her and their child. Henceforth, he said quietly, Bethorig is no longer my heir. He will be banished from the kingdom. This child that you have borne me today will grow to rule solitude. And perhaps more, said Fatima. He is the emperor's grandson as well. We will name him Mantiarco II. My darling, I would love that, said Fatima, kissing the king's tear-streaked face. But may I suggest Uriel, after my grandfather, the emperor, who brought us together in marriage? King Mantiarco smiled at his wife and nodded his head. There was a knock at the door. My liege, said Mountboken, His Highness Prince Bethorig has finished the tournament and awaits you to present his award. He has successfully withstood attacks by 9 archers and the giant scorpion we brought in from Hammerfell. The crowd is roaring his name. They are calling him the man who cannot be hit. I will see him, said King Mantiarco sadly, and left the chamber. Oh, he can be hit, all right, said Fatima wearily. But it does take some doing. And that's the end of this book. So we leave that kind of on a cliffhanger. The king is supposed to be going to give him an award, and is he going to tell him at that time that he's banished from the kingdom and that he's no longer his heir? And his wife, Fatima, and that Vulcan, they are scheming, because that didn't really happen. They planted those letters there. So we shall see what happens after this, okay? And I will see you next time, grandkids, and we will read the next book in the series of The Wolf Queen. Bye-bye, grandkids.